What's up, everybody? Welcome in to Best Bets. The BetSided crew, Sans Ian McMillan, is all here. Ben Heisler, Reed Wallach, Peter Dewey, and Donovan Smoot. Good to see you fellas today. Joanne Stoner behind the controls for us as well. Well, we got a fun start to the playoffs. We'll dive into what we've seen. We'll get into our best bets for both the Eastern and Western Conference, and then an opportunity for us to look back at last week when we made our picks for the NBA Finals and make an evaluation on whether or not we want to stay with those picks or if we want to play something else. Considering what we've seen so far, it's been a fun playoff so far, wouldn't you say, guys? You know, all of us went ahead and jumped on Jordan Poole to win NBA Finals MVP, just like we all predicted. Um, Honestly, I almost feel like we kind of just blew him off to the side among the most valuable and most improved players in the league this year because he's absolutely taken over in that series. And the guy who's going to win MVP can basically only sit and watch. Like when we're looking at Jordan Poole, I kind of feel like he's been the early story throughout the course of the playoffs so far.
Yeah, I think Jordan Poole is the most improved player of the year. If you talk about the award of most improved player, like Jordan Poole was in the G League in January last year. Like this guy he wasn't in the rotation. He came back, played really well at the end of the 2020-21 season, and then parlayed that into playing well in the play-in tournament as well. But like if you talk about actual improvement, like Ja Morant was already good. I know he's going to win the award because that's just the way it's going to go. And yes, he made the leap from good to all-star, all-NBA quality player, which arguably is the hardest leap to make. There's plenty of really good players, but to make that leap to an all-NBA player is that's the extra step. But if in the spirit of the award of most improved, like Jordan Poole went from a borderline rotation guy to the Warriors' third or fourth most important player, depending upon what you think of Draymond Green, Klay Thompson at this point. So Jordan Poole has been fantastic. The one thing I will say about these playoffs is the no LeBron has allowed us to get some new faces, and between Jordan Poole and Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Maxey, that's what's made it really fun for me. You get the young generation is really showing out so far.
Yeah, just to jump off what Peter said, I totally agree. I think the lack of definition for most improved player makes it difficult to really assess who is the most improved player, right? I saw there was some chatter online, there needs to be a barrier to entry basically for the most improved discussion. If you're a second year pro, you can't enter the most improved player conversation, or if you were a top 5 pick, you can't be in the most improved conversation. I know it's a tricky target, but I agree that there needs to be some sort of kind of barrier or threshold before you could actually be most improved player. Because I think someone like Jordan Poole or even Tyrese Maxey, who I know is a second-year pro, but guys like that should get more love than someone like Ja Morant, in my opinion. And then from a playoff perspective, the Warriors last night were sick because it was an old-school Warriors tidal wave. I was discussing this morning. I don't know what was more fun, either the second quarter where they went off or the third quarter where it was Klay hit 2 threes. Then Steph had a few layups. And then Jordan Poole did that crazy step back in the quarter. So, but what about the Dallas Mavericks and Jalen Brunson going for 41? Easily, I guess you got the Timberwolves. And again, each night seems to one up the next. But that Mavericks upset changes the entire series right there, especially with Brunson putting on. So, I think, like Peter said, a lot of guys stepping up in LeBron's absence, I guess.
Future Nick Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, really.
It's gonna be terrible. They're gonna give Jalen generational wealth, and it's gonna be awful.
I mean, his dad is Rick Brunson, so they kind of already have generational wealth, but it'll be on top of another generation,
square, which is ridiculous. But listen, and I don't want to hate, and you guys are just pulling me in to my natural state, which is being a hater. But I don't want to hate on Jordan Poole, but to say that there needs to be a barrier of entry, it's oh, you can't be a second year player, whatever. That just means okay, whoever's most liked on Twitter will just give him the award in year 2. I'm of the belief that it's actually really hard though. Like what Peter was saying, in my opinion, it's the harder jump to go from okay, I'm gonna be this good player to all NBA. to go from where Ja Morant was to this season being one of like the 3 best guards in the league is ridiculous. And so like his 3-point percentage went up by 4 points. His field goal percentage went up by 5 points. His point total overall went up by 8. Like I think that everything that Ja's doing for Poole can relatively stay at this level, and it would be like okay, but you see a lot of guys that just go from being okay, I'm gonna score 8 this night, and then now I'm a 16-point scorer, and then that's it, because it's easier to do that than to do what Ja did. Like I think that you can improve at any stage of your career, and we might actually need to expand the barrier of what we think whenever we're talking about most improved.
But isn't that expected though of Ja, like to become a superstar? That's more.
Right.
I feel like the expectation.
He's a top 2 pick, and Jordan Poole is like an end of the first rounder. So yeah,
That's more what I'm saying. And again, I'm not saying like Ja doesn't deserve most improved player, but like I guess it's almost like a most surprised or most outperforming expectation. Like Ja was supposed to take this leap in some regard, where Jordan Poole, like Peter said, he was in the G League last year. So that's more what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. And we have the same. We've done this with literally every NBA award. Is that like everybody's come up with this some like abstract definition of whatever the award means to them, and so it's like with Ja, we're doing with Ja this year what we're doing with basically every other MVP for the last 20 years, and that it's like, oh well, we're kind of just tired of you being whatever, or you're supposed to be this good, so we're not going to give you the award. If we're going by actual most valuable player, LeBron should have X amount of MVPs. Like he should be the MVP every single year. And
I agreed with that. I used to, at least, not necessarily right now.
Right? Like Jordan should have had a decade where he got MVPs. LeBron should have had his decade. And then if we're talking about like most improved, yeah, like Ja's actually most improved, but we're just not giving him that credit because initially in our minds we're thinking you're supposed to be the most improved player, and he did it. So we should give him that credit.
Is there?
I'll give you credit for the response. I don't know if I agree with it, but I give you. It was a fair argument.
Listen, I actually take that. I take that respect a lot more than agreeing with my point.
Here's what I'm wondering, because I feel like there's no good way around it. You're going to have for a subjective award, and that's what it is, right? We can all agree. Like there's no set of actual criteria is going to dictate what defines most valuable player or most improved player. We can only go with a handful of different things that voters are going to disagree on as to what takes precedence and what has a higher weight over the other. But what if the media got together and came up with like a set list, like, went from, I don't even know how you define it, but if you have certain, like, you guys remember Donovan, Peter, and Reed, you guys were all like in college like a couple of years ago. For me, it was a lifetime ago. But you go in first day of class, you have the syllabus, the professor hands it out, and you kind of know exactly what you're going to be graded on over the course of the year. Could that work for postseason awards in the NBA so that voters are actually sticking to a specific set of criteria? Is that something that could actually work when you would actually know who the award should go to, or would that take away kind of the fun?
It would take away the fun. And something that I see on Twitter a lot, and it's a very funny meme where it's like, you on one side you have one guy who's just so sad because he's like the advanced stat nerd, and then you have the other guy who's like he's looking out the window and he's so happy, and like the caption above him is like he just watches basketball and it's like that guy's nice. Like I think that's a very important part of the game, to where you can just like see somebody and just be like, yo, that dude right there, he's nice. And I think if you put in a set criteria of, oh, you have to jump from 12 points per game to 17, or your field goal percentage has to jump, X amount of points, then it disqualifies a lot of guys who otherwise, if you're like actually watching games, might actually be most improved.
Yeah. I mean, again, this goes back to the barrier of entry thing, just because of like, to me, it's like more expectation what most improved is. But like any award, I guess you need that, you need different opinions. You need different thought process of how people get to that. And like this goes into other awards, but like people just think different things and you're entitled to your own opinion. It just, the nuances of voting and like some of these guys that like and you know these voters that have their opinion count for something, they just look at it incorrectly. You know, that's why maybe some sort of baseline help could help some of these people really get to the answer faster. But like for most improved, I just think that for someone like John Morant, the expectation is you are supposed to be great. You're supposed to get there. So I just don't know if him achieving that is worthy of what this award I think is supposed to be.
Who's looking at it wrong?
What?
I said who's looking at it incorrectly? Drop names.
I don't know. The people are going to vote for him, and he's going to get like 75% of the vote. I'm thinking more like Defensive Player of the Year. Like, I don't know. Just some of these awards, people kind of galaxy brain it where I disagree. You know, to me, I think if Robert Williams doesn't get hurt, he gets Defensive Player of the Year. But like Marcus Smart got it because like Robert Williams missed the last like 10 games of the year.
Right. Like there's
it's all recency bias. Like the same people who said like Giannis is going to win MVP because he had 2 monster games at the end of the year. Like, to me, awards voting is all psychology. It has nothing to do with the actual numbers and the actual year that these people have put together.
That part I slightly disagree with because I think for cases like Jokic, it has been about the numbers consistently throughout the course of the year, right? Like Jokic's argument.
Did you see though, at the end of the year, Giannis like skyrocketed up the odds board, like just because like in people's heads, it's like, oh my God, look what Giannis did. But in reality, that was all like smoke. That was all nothing.
Yes, but he's not going to win it. It might have moved a little bit of perception, but
that's what I'm saying. People fall into that recency bias trap.
Oh, people without question fall into recency bias. But I think the question based off of Jokic is purely based on data-driven information. Like I think that's been a change and a paradigm shift in league circles. And then one other quick thing, and Peter, I know you have thoughts on this as well. The other aspect that I think is remarkable is that, you know, if Morant was still in the MVP conversation, let's say Morant was a top 3 MVP candidate, is he still winning most improved player? Yeah. Like if people thought he was going to be the MVP, then I don't think he's winning both awards, which again doesn't make any sense because if he's the most valuable player, well, like he's allowed to have both. But the voters would say, well, you know, he's probably going to win MVP, so I'll go ahead and give this to somebody else. Like, it is a flawed system, but one that we can have a lot of fun with and bet on over the course of the year.
Yeah, Ben, you make a great point because the reason that this happened, it's 100% a flawed system, but like it's the system we've used for years, so it's not going to change. But like you're 100% right. Like if John Morant's an MVP candidate, like entering the season, how can he win most improved player if he was already supposed to be an MVP candidate? It's such a tough spot to put yourself in. I think the sweet spot you have to find is like, I'm a fan of the advanced numbers, but like there's advanced numbers that can make anybody look good depending upon the way you look at them. Like there's certain stats, and I hate to bring up the Knicks, but like early in the season, like there were certain Knicks bench guys who are like, oh my God, this guy's impact has been great. And then you look at who he plays on the floor with and you're like, okay, this is why his on-off numbers look really good. So, I mean, in the case of Nikola Jokic, like he's leading in defensive box plus minus, offensive box, but like everything. So there's the numbers argument. But you also got to watch the games. Donovan makes a great point. Like you got to watch. There's a semblance of the eye test that also matters in this. Sure. And I think some people get too caught up in just one side or the other, and not that it needs to be a combination of the two. Like you can look at the year this year Ja had, and like he improved from 3, but you like watch him play, he's still not an elite 3-point shooter, but you see the difference when you watch him play this year to last year. And like maybe he only shot 34% from 3, but him shooting 34% from 3 this year is a lot different than him shooting 29 last year and everybody going under a screen every time he came off a pick and roll. So it's like stuff like that is super important. That's why like when we talk about placing futures bets on a team, on a player, on anything, like you need to watch these games so you understand what you're betting on, because if you're just blindly betting it and you lose, you're going to want to know, at least I know I would, like, why did I not win this? Why did this bet not come to fruition? And if you just put yourself in a position where, I know everybody's not a basketball junkie, but you watch a ton of basketball, like you're going to be able to find that sweet spot of the two. Because I think that's really what we're all trying to do.
No doubt. And by the way, there's still like this conversation can go on for a while. We'll get more information on a lot of these different future awards as they come out. Of course, We've had coverage all throughout the season over at BetSided. And by the way, with regards to the NBA playoffs, we'll dive into our best bets for the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference coming up in just a few minutes. Same thing with play or stay for our NBA Finals picks from last week. Have we seen enough over 1 week of playoff basketball that's going to make us change our mind? We'll get to that coming up a little bit later on in the show. Wanted to also mention, I'm very excited about this. I know you guys are as well. In addition to the return of Bet and Breakfast right here on YouTube and over on @BetSided on Twitter. That's every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Shout out to Donovan and Peter over the weekend for holding it down as the NBA playoffs got started. But not only is Bet and Breakfast back on the weekends, but we got a brand new show right here on YouTube and also at BetSided on social. It's going to be called the Daily Bet Slip. And every day, 5 o'clock Eastern time, it's going to be a couple of us from the team going through our favorite bets of the night. We'll go over some of our brutal bad beats from earlier over in the day as well. Take a look ahead, have some special guests join us as well. Just a good opportunity once you get off of work or if you're starting to close up shop to come and hang out with us, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on YouTube, and just have a lot of fun along the way as we go through some of our favorite bets. And we want this to be open-ended. If you have questions about NBA games going on that night, maybe you got a thought or a prop that you really like in Major League Baseball, send it to us and we'll dive into it. We'll address all of these bets together. And the fun part is that we're also going to have a daily bet from our BetSided fans and community. We will go ahead and actually place a wager on that bet over the course of every show. So you guys get to decide that. And the show pot will ride or die with you, which I'm also very excited about. So the daily bet slip actually starts next Monday, 5 o'clock East Coast time. Make sure you guys stick around and hang out for that. All right, guys, let's do a little bit of NBA look ahead for the Eastern Conference. So this is a area that I still think you're going to have a lot more debate on with regards to the East as opposed to the West. And just to go over the numbers to win over at WinBet, the Bucks still the favorites to win the East. They're at plus 200. So that number might have dropped just a tad after that close call against the Bulls over in Game 1. You have Boston right behind them at 3-1. Miami's at plus 350. The Sixers plus 475. And then Reed's Brooklyn Nets after a heartbreaking loss in Game 1. Some nice possible value now on the board for the Brooklyn Nets at 5-1. Teams like the Hawks, the Bulls, and the Raptors, they're all over at 100-1. Considering how much love we showed the Raptors last week, guys, watching them just get completely dominated in the first two games has certainly been eye-opening, but the series does shift to Toronto. That could provide some possible value there. So I will start with you, Peter. Looking at the Eastern Conference, I need a team. I need a team that you're buying in on, not to necessarily win the finals, but to win the East. Based off the numbers, who do you like?
Yeah. First, I'll start with saying I was dead wrong about the Raptors. They have nothing for anyone in this series, apparently. So that
there's
one,
zero chance of them turning it around.
That one, I might be out on them, especially with Scotty Barnes out. But we don't need to kick the can with how bad they've been in these playoffs. So I'm gonna take the Bucks still. I talked about it on the show last week. I have the Bucks coming out of the East. I have a future on them at 7-1, I believe. And so I don't love how the Bucks looked in Game 1 against the Bulls. I really expected them to kind of roll in that game, especially where they were up, I believe, 8 at the half, and they kind of just floundered in the second half, let the Bulls hang around. But the way I look at it is this: Milwaukee shot 40% from the field. Chris Middleton played one of his worst games of the season, and they still won this game. So got to think things are coming on the up and up at this point. I don't think they play much worse. Granted, the Bulls, I don't think can play much worse. They shot 32% from the field. So credit to Milwaukee's defense, I guess, in that aspect. And we've talked about how they kind of slipped over the last month of the season there. So I still like the Bucks. And the main reason why is I think they get through this series in 5 games maximum. And we watched Game 1 of Celtics Nets, and it was an absolute dogfight. Tatum hits the buzzer to win the game. And it was a physical game, especially that first quarter. Ton of fouls, guys getting knocked around. Kevin Durant was getting knocked around, which is like something you rarely see, even though he just doesn't really have like that frame. Like Tatum and Brown were pushing him around when he was on the perimeter. It was interesting to watch. I think that series probably goes 6 or 7 games, and it's going to be a dogfight. And so I think the Bucks have the advantage of whoever they come in and play is going to be gassed coming off a really, really tough series. And I think that benefits the Bucks early on in the series. And the same thing, I think I said it last week, there is nobody on either one of those teams who has anything for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So at the end of the day, yeah, there's probably nobody who has anything for Kevin Durant, but at the same time, the Bucks supporting cast, I think, is just much better than the Nets and the Celtics, to be honest with you. So I'll roll with the Bucks here, but I think the Eastern Conference winners coming out of those three teams.
I fully agree with you, and so I'm still gonna stick with the Bucks. I'm gonna stick with them to win it all. You know, they were my pick, but the one thing I will say, I am concerned. I'm not as confident, and I have no doubt that they're still going to run through Chicago. I think that this series is still going to be a sweep. They shot 26% from three. They're going to be fine. I have no doubt about this series. My concern with them lies with Chris Middleton, because we've seen Middleton over the years have these streaks and have these spurts where he just can't make a basket. And they were able to get through the Nets last year with a banged up Harden and no Kyrie and Durant's foot on the line, right? They were able to get out of that series by a shoe size. And Middleton had a couple games in there where he was awful. And listen, if Kyrie comes out and Kyrie's dropping 39 and KD's there and KD's dropping 30, Giannis, as great as he is, he's going to need Chris to do what he does. And if Chris is out here, if Chris is out here going 4 of 13 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3, 11.7 turnovers, if he does that over a 7-game series, I'm low key nervous. I'm still gonna bet on them because I think they are the better team. Just like on paper, I like their roster better than Brooklyn's, but I'm a little concerned. I'm just a little bit. So we'll see how next series plays out. Yeah.
All right. So we got 2 for got choked up talking about the Milwaukee Bucks.
Emotional.
And beating up.
Emotional. We're telling Ben his Bulls are done in 5. He does not want to hear it.
I showed up in a Bulls jersey last week. I was trying to get myself hyped up for it. No, I know it's over, and they had an opportunity to steal game 1 and they didn't. And I'm on the Bucks as well. I wonder though, and Reed, this is where I know that you're in disagreement. Like, yes, the Bucks have shown an ability to weather a storm as well as anybody. Like you mentioned, Chris Middleton not showing up. He goes in waves and spurts, and there will be other nights where Holiday has an off night and Middleton goes for 35. Brook Lopez, of all guys, was the guy that took over the game late in the fourth quarter against Chicago, which cannot happen. Like, I get that he's not a bona fide scrub, but he's not Drew Holiday. He's not Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's not Chris Middleton. He's Brook effing Lopez.
He's not Bobby Portis either.
Former Brook Lopez.
Brook Lopez is solid in the right matchups. He's solid in the right matchups.
And
I don't know.
Apparently, he got all the right matchups down the stretch against the Chicago Bulls. But I just feel like they still win games when they're not at their best. And then when you need them to be at their best is when they've made those adjustments. Case in point, the NBA Finals last year. So I'm still riding with Milwaukee here, even though they show you times and they frustrate the hell out of you because you know that the collective amount of talent should be better than typically what you see. But just when you're about to give up on them, that's when they tend to flip the script. And I feel like that's coming, especially like game 2, I think is going to be a complete and total blowout over at Pfizer. Like, it's just not going to go well for Chicago. DeRozan could shoot lights out. Like we joked beforehand that he says, I'm not going to shoot 6 for 25 again. Like, well, DeRozan has a history of coming up a little bit short in the postseason. And this isn't a dog on DeRozan. He's had an unbelievable year. But I just don't see it happening for Chicago. I'm with you guys on the Bucks. Reed, tell us why we're wrong.
Well, Donovan makes a great point about Middleton. And last year when the Nets and Bucks had their epic series, the Giannis doesn't scare me in a playoff series. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but Giannis is going to get 35, 15, like 7 assists and 4 blocks. Like, he's going to get that. It's where do the rest of the points come from? So Middleton always scared me more than Giannis in a series because it's if Middleton's on, then you really got a problem because then you got 2 guys coming at you. Because, like, again, you can't stop Giannis. You know what he's going to do. So how do we get the rest of it? It's like the same thing with the Nets. You know Durant and Kyrie are combining for 65, 70 points. Where are the other 35 coming from? So the Middleton portion, yes, is very important. And him and Holiday have had a lot of playoff games. I know they won the title, but they still have had a lot of playoff games where they're not on. So I'm going to tell you why the Brooklyn Nets are still going to do it. Obviously, wasted opportunity, meltdown on Sunday, gut-wrenching loss for the Nets faithful. And it really is a sign of the issue all year for the Nets, which is mental errors. We saw that inbounds pass that was stolen by Marcus Smart. Like, that just can't happen. Not executing that 2-for-1 and not, being discombobulated on defense. That's all signs of a really, poorly coached and poorly prepared team, to be honest. That being said, Kevin Durant, I believe, shot 9 of 24, and the Nets were out-rebounded by 14, 9 on the offensive glass. They still lost by 1 and had the lead with half a second left. And I personally, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought the Celtics outplayed the Nets for that entire game, sans a Kyrie Irving, microwave epic fourth quarter. Tell me if I'm wrong there.
No, I would agree.
I agree with you.
I think that was the Celtics. I wouldn't call it a game, but it really felt like the Celtics kind of played on their higher end of outcomes. Like they played a better game than they their C, or I guess they played like a B plus game. So just a few stats. If we take out, to me the difference was mental lapses by the Nets and offensive rebounding. I don't think the offensive rebound is going to change, but the Nets could also clean up their turnovers. And if you look at just half-court offensive rating, the Celtics scored 91 points per 100 possessions. The Nets scored 103 points per 100 possessions. And that's with Durant having a really off game. Maybe Kyrie comes back to earth. But again, it feels like the Nets have adjustments to make, and the Celtics don't really. The Nets killed Daniel Tice. They killed Grant Williams. Al Horford played – that I know for certain was his best game. Thanks, Bruce Brown, for really firing him up for no reason. So again, yes, tomorrow night is a must-win for the Nets. I still think they can win. Of course, there's the Ben Simmons factor. I think he's going to play on Saturday, Game 3. I'm not expecting much, but those are things that could potentially turn a series. I still think the Nets get through this series. I think that time is on their side in that case, if that could give Simmons more opportunity to ramp up. I still have concerns about the Bucks defense. I told you the last month of the season came in the bottom or outside the top 20 in defensive rating. I just think that there is still room for this Nets team to go. But yeah, no, I think Peter makes a really great point though about this Nets Celtics series is going to be long and physical. So maybe that is advantage Bucks, but who am I to get off the bandwagon now? Let's rally the troops.
I'll make one point to kind of to back what Reed's saying, because I do think there's a serious chance. I was shocked that the series price for this Nets Celtics series moved as much as it did after Game 1. I thought it was kind of going to stay the same. But here's just a couple of what Reed talks about. I think the Celtics played their A game. I saw some people saying Jaylen Brown.
That's a concern if you are saying Boston got that has to be a serious concern for you.
Yeah. I saw some people saying, Jaylen Brown should have been better. Well, Jaylen Brown hit some big buckets in the fourth quarter. So, he shot, I believe, 9 for 19, but he had 23 points. It wasn't like he stunk. He played great. And how many times have we seen Kevin Durant in his career shoot below 40% from the field and turn the ball over 6 times? I think you could probably count him on one hand. It's just the amount of times that he has that poor of a performance. I just don't see that happening again. And granted, Kyrie played great, but you look at the Celtics, role guys / who they need to step up. Al Horford, 20 and 15 on 8 of 13. Marcus Smart, 8 of 17, 7 boards, 6 assists, 20 points. Are they really going to get 40 points out of Marcus Smart and Al Horford again? I don't know. Marcus Smart is shooting. He shot 4 for 9 from 3. He's shooting 30% from 3 this season. So I feel like Boston kind of gave the Nets their best shot. They still blew the lead in the fourth quarter, and then they were able to claw their way back and win. So I don't think that this says either team is going to automatically win the series, but I think the fact I think the fact that Boston is favored by as much as they are. I believe the Nets are plus 220 or plus 250, something like that, to win the series. That is a way too high for me, and that's the whole reason why it comes back to my Bucks pick. I just think these teams are going to play every game is going to be down to the wire for 6 or 7 games. I just don't know how you come out of that and then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you have to play Giannis now. It's just not a great scenario to be in.
The gross overreaction to week one to game one of the first round of the playoffs in a lot of these series is fascinating. And it's funny that it took one loss at the buzzer on a great pass to Jason Tatum for all of a sudden now that's when the line is moving and that's when the public is jumping all over the Celtics. We waited 82 games for the line to move on Brooklyn and it never did. So all of a sudden, one game now is going to completely change and dictate that then? No, like they're already playing in Boston. They still have home court advantage. I think a lot of us like Brooklyn to bounce back in game two. So I do think there's value right now on the Nets. You're right. It's going to become a slugfest in that series and Milwaukee should be well rested. And that may ultimately be what brings Brooklyn down. But Reed brought up one thing that I thought to be really interesting. And I wonder if this is something that deserves more attention. From a talent standpoint, Brooklyn can keep up with Boston, but you also can expect Boston to not make the same type of mental lapses that we've seen out of Brooklyn. That's a concern for me. Like if that's been an ongoing issue all season long, Reed, like it's hard for me to get behind a team that continues to make mistakes that they should be fixing by now. Like at some point, this is going to come back and bite you in the ass, and you saw it. And who says that can't happen again if it's been something that's been ongoing all year long?
Yeah, just really quick on that. The Nets do have adjustments to make, but again, we're counting on Steve Nash and this team that doesn't have a lot of experience together to make these adjustments. Ime Udoka, former Nets assistant coach, he's proven to be a great coach. And those last 45 seconds to me, where after the Kyrie 3, the Celtics end up coming back, that looked like a team that played the entire season together and had a lot of chemistry, and they figured their stuff out, versus a team that is really talented but also is kind of thrown together here. That is what it looked like.
Yeah, no doubt.
So if that's their downfall, then it is what it is.
Wait, hold on. Wait. I do want to push back on that just a little bit. I feel like the last 3 minutes of that, I was not getting the sense that the Nets was some collective team that was like finally figuring stuff out.
He's saying Boston.
Okay.
I was saying the Celtics were.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I was saying one team was that, one team wasn't that.
Okay.
Yes,
then I agree. My bad.
So there you have it. 3 picks for Milwaukee, plus 200 over at WinBet to win the East. Reed staying with the Brooklyn Nets. Can't get off the ship right now, despite being down.
Never imagine.
Never. The mitigated gall to be able to leave the Brooklyn Nets at this point in the playoffs is just absurd. But they are available for anybody that's watching us on the live stream right now at plus 500. If you believe that Brooklyn is winning this series, this would be an ideal time to go ahead and jump on that number, because if they do even up the series, that number, just like we saw after game one, is probably going to move in a wide margin. Let's move on to the West. It's a series and a possible Western Conference champion that feels a little bit more lopsided than the rest. Phoenix already is minus 130 after their early start on the Pelicans, and then they would get to play the winner of Dallas and Utah in the next round of the playoffs in the 4-5. Utah already a mess. We also have concerns about the status of Luka Doncic. I know that there were reports that he's trending in the right direction, but that could still be several games away. So I think all of us are kind of looking at Phoenix as kind of having a cakewalk to the Western Conference Finals, where they're likely to be paired up against Golden State. The Warriors are at plus 275. Following them are the Memphis Grizzlies at 7-1. Utah, a lot of the odds makers over at WinBet very high on Utah relative to how I think we all stand on them. They're 10-1. Followed by the
watch last night's game, man. I'll tell you that.
I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. 10-1 odds, 10-foot pole. Completely stay away from the Jazz. That's our take for it. We're probably not going to address it the rest of the show. Timberwolves at 16-1, followed by the Mavericks at 20-1. Denver at 30-1, and then New Orleans in that Bulls and Raptors category that we talked about earlier at 100-1 to win the West. Donovan, I'm going to start with you on this one. As far as teams plays to go ahead and make it out to the Western Conference and actually win the conference, give me your team here.
Listen, I try to tell y'all, the Warriors are back. and they're going to make the finals. They're going to win the West. They're going to beat Memphis. They're going to beat Phoenix. And listen, Reed was talking about it earlier. What we saw last night from them, and the Warriors being able to just have a complete onslaught and a shooting clinic on everybody. And now it's not just Steph and Clay doing it. You have Jordan Poole who's doing. You had Steph Curry coming off the bench playing less than 25 minutes and scoring 34 points. They are so just have so much firepower that I don't know if anybody in the West can stop them if they're all rolling. Defensively, Draymond was fantastic. They can switch. They can switch on so many things. You have Gary Payton the second, who's always going to be in somebody's in somebody's face. Steph, for all the defensive challenges that he's had over his career, is now a very, very solid team defender for what it's worth. And if Clay can stay in front of of anybody, then the Warriors are going to be just fine. I think that their experience over this last 7 years, I guess, their experience is finally showing. And the one final offensive piece that they needed to combat whatever drop off Klay Thompson was going to have, they got that and then some in Jordan Poole. Like, the Warriors are as dangerous as they've ever been, and they're coming out the West. It's not even to me. It's not a question at this point, and they have a great price.
Not a question.
It's not, and they have a great price because everybody overreacted to the Suns and Chris Paul going 7 for 7 on the Pelicans. Let's see what happens tonight when he plays Scott Foster. Let's see what happens.
Listen, if the NBA just gives Scott Foster to every single Suns game the rest of the playoffs, like, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's what we need. But like the Warriors, you had Steph Curry came off the bench in less than 25 minutes and scored 34 points. And he arguably wasn't the most impressive player from last night. They're dangerous. They're scary. And they're going to be the Western Conference champions.
I'm going to push back just a little bit. I mean, I have a preseason Warriors future. I'm obviously very optimistic overall, but this is the Nuggets, the team that, yes, they have Jokic, but we said going into the playoffs that they're toast. They're going to be one and done. They're going to be out. They're a terrible matchup for the Warriors, all that stuff. So in this matchup, they are thriving. And in the next matchup, maybe against the Grizzlies or Timberwolves, maybe they'll thrive again. But again, I'm trying not – yes, they looked amazing, and I get that, but it is also a 2-game sample against a team that is outmatched. So I'm not saying that I am betting the Suns. I don't think there's much value on them, but I think that they are still rightfully the favorite. They're going to have home court in a series against the Warriors. I think that series would be epic. I'm just pushing back that I still think the Suns should be favored. One, because they have home court, but two, because they've done it over a season. The Warriors, maybe they were kind of hiding in plain sight with the injury to Draymond and the injury to Steph, but to me, I still give a slight edge to Phoenix because of home court and because they do still have that track record. But I'm trying not to overreact despite how sick it did look last night.
I will push back on your pushback with this, right? So the Warriors have dominated the last 2 games. They were a 6.5 point favorite in game 1. I think they were 7.5 last night. If they win and barely cover, if they win by 7 in game 1 and they win by 8 last night, we're looking at the Warriors and we're saying, oh man, they have some issues. Like they can't dominate. I think the fact that we can look at the Warriors and say, you can go out and blow teams out who you are supposed to blow out, that is a very, very good thing. And I think that if it was any other way, like the Suns needed a 7 for 7 fourth quarter from Chris Paul to finally
I don't know about that. They let up 35 points.
They took the foot off the gas.
I'm more saying that I'm not trying to overreact long term based on the Warriors beating up on an outmatched opponent. Like, we can say the same thing about the Sixers. They destroyed the Raptors the first 2 games of the series. The Heat destroyed the Hawks. Like, matchups make this thing. And I agree with you that the Warriors, I think they're going to go to the Western Conference Finals, and they're very live to beat the Suns. I'm just pouring a little bit of water that these 2 games are what the entire playoffs are going to be.
Okay, so you know how earlier you said we're not going to give Ja Morant the most improved because we expected that? I right? I'm not going to speak for y'all. I expected this out of Golden State.
Well, yeah, so did everyone. They were like minus 300 to win this series.
No. I'm saying what you're going to see for the next 2 months out of Golden State.
Oh, you're saying they're going to keep this up and run through like the Suns.
Whoever I think if they play, so they're going to play either Minnesota or Memphis in round 2.
Yeah.
I think that might be a 5-game series for either one.
I think Memphis might match up better than Minnesota.
Maybe. And I'm not.
They'd win that series. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna sit here and say like you're wrong or anything like that. But I personally,
why not? It's fun.
I personally believe that the Warriors are retooled and finally have that extra piece. They have the depth back, like the strength in numbers, the firepower, everything that we were looking at the Warriors 2-3 years ago and saying, oh wow, like they're light years ahead. They have all of those qualities back again. Obviously, it's not the same because they don't have Kevin Durant, Jordan Poole, right? But you're looking at them and you're saying this feels exactly the same. And so I'm perfectly okay with saying, yeah, they're going to be dominant until they play the Suns. And then,
going out on a limb there.
And then look, they're going to go beat Phoenix in 6 and then go to the and go to the finals. Like that's.
I don't think it'd be that crazy. I'm more just pushing back on the notion that like destroying the Nuggets, who are outmatched, and we all kind of expected this. I'm like,
I see what you're saying.
They look really good. I'm praying that everyone stays healthy and we get something.
They're back, and everybody should be scared.
I'm going to make points for both of you. All right, I'm going to make points for both of you. I'm going to take the middle road here a little bit. Because I have a future on the Warriors and I have a future on the Suns. I bet the Warriors after game 1, regrettably didn't do it before. I was debating it in my head, and then Jordan Poole just said, Pete, if you're going to be all in on this Jordan Poole trade, you gotta do it. So I'm doing it. But here's
the most public Pete play ever.
There you go.
Is a future on the Suns and a future on the Warriors.
There you go.
The Warriors after they destroy the Nuggets in game 1.
It had to happen. I needed it. So anyway. This is the way I look at it, okay? Because you could both make very good points. And the reason why I wouldn't bet the Suns, obviously, at this number is there's just zero value in it. And, like, God forbid somebody gets hurt. Like, am I really going to lay that juice with the Suns to win the conference?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Scott Foster in a game 6 or 7.
Yeah,
a lot
exactly.
of stuff can go down.
Adam Silver loves chaos. He might just have a Suns Warriors series and they put Scott Foster on every other game just for fun and be like, you got to win these 4, otherwise you guys aren't getting in. So this is the way I look at it. I'll take the Warriors side first. So we talked about how great Nikola Jokic is all year, why he's the MVP, blah, 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 blah. The Nuggets are plus 8.4 points per 100 possessions when he's on the floor, right? All that stuff. This is not a good matchup for Denver. I am not saying that there was a chance Denver was going to win the game. In 2 games, they are minus 45 with Nikola Jokic on the court. Minus 45. So the Warriors are saying, okay, you have the guy who has been the best player when he's on the floor this year in terms of plus minus. And we are just going to – they're not even running him. We are just going to destroy you. We do not care when he's on the floor. We are going to destroy you. The death lineup, the new death lineup they have of Wiggins, Draymond, Poole, Curry, Clay, closed the last 2 halves 44-14. They closed the first half in both game 1 and game 2. That is just, to me, right there, they have – we talk about, like, what teams do. What is your go-to? And with the Nets – it's like if KD and Kyrie are going, there's kind of you have no answer for it at that point. With the Bucks, it's when they have that lineup when they go Giannis at the 4 and they have Drew, Middleton, Portis. It's really, really tough to match up with. I don't know if there is anybody in the NBA who can match up with that Warriors 5 if those guys are all going. They scored 84 points, Poole, Steph, and Clay last night. 84. Like we talk about, where are the other 35 points coming from? Like these other teams, like. I'm not saying Jordan Poole is Kevin Durant, but he is the best number 3 option they have ever had next to Steph and Clay. And his playmaking ability to me might be more of the reasoning why, because they can put the ball in his hands and run both Steph and Clay off the ball. And you have so much attention that you have to put on those guys. There was a play last night where Clay ran to the corner and 2 guys ran out on him and Jordan Poole throws the ball to Wiggins. He gets a wide open dunk. And it's like when you have 3 different guys that you have to defend like that on the floor, it's virtually unguardable. And it's the same thing we saw when they had KD. Obviously, Jordan Poole isn't KD, but it's that type of offense that they have now when they go to that lineup. So that's my argument for the Warriors. But on the same side, you have to look at the Suns defensively. The Suns can match up one-on-one with certain guys. We saw Mikal Bridges shut down Steph Curry in a game earlier this year. Like the Devin Booker-Clay matchup, I think is kind of a wash between the two of them of what you do there. And then obviously you got to figure out, what do you do with Chris Paul? Does Chris Paul guard Steph? Does he guard Jordan Poole? How do you want to match up on that side? But the Suns, their thing is they can go with a smaller lineup with Jay Crowder at the floor of their starting lineup, and then they have the size advantage, Ayton on Draymond, if you decide to go there. So I am praying for that Western Conference Finals just because I think that might be the NBA Finals. Like, it might just be the best possible series we could get. But the big thing for me is, if Golden State shoots like this, I just don't think there's anybody offensively who can compete with them in terms of the shooting and the consistency on their roster.
Again, you're praying for that matchup. You're praying for those futures tickets. It's okay. You can.
I'm praying for as a basketball fan. I'm praying for that matchup. The future six. I could care less. As a basketball fan, I need that matchup. It would be too good. There's nobody else in the West I want to see. Like, I don't want to see the Jazz. I don't want to see the Mavs, even if Luka's there. Like, Ja would be cool, but they also just they're ran out of the gym by the Timberwolves. Like, they would get killed by either one of these teams. So, give me Warriors Suns, please.
I need Warriors Suns. You talk about the matchups and what do you do with Chris Paul? Let me tell you something. Chris Paul wants no parts of Steph Curry, because for the last 6 years, Steph Curry has owned that man. Chris Paul wants no parts of Steph Curry. So bring it on. Bring it on. We will run pick and rolls and get the switch, and Steph will go for 30 again.
If we made a Twitter poll right now and we asked the question, who has owned Chris Paul more in the NBA playoffs, and we listed Steph Curry or Scott Foster, who do you guys think would win?
Scott Foster.
It would probably be Scott
Foster.
It would probably be Scott.
Undefeated.
Scott Foster, undefeated, never lost.
Yeah.
And also Chris Paul hasn't been to the conference finals like that with Steph. He hasn't been able to match up with him in the playoffs like that. So
it's bad enough when one man already owns your soul, but when you got two,
that's terrible.
That's co-op.
I
need CP3 to break the streak tonight. Just for his own sanity, they can't lose to the Pelicans.
I will fade every. I can't do it.
It'll be like in semi-pro at the Flint Tropic Mega Bowl if they win. Like, they'll celebrate as if they won a title.
If that does happen, though, that would actually be incredible. And I hope Paul gets asked about it post game, and I hope he has something good.
Definitely will.
I want to throw one other team into the conversation, because yes, we've talked about how the Suns are likely to be that team. I know Donovan disagrees, and I know, Peter, you've made arguments for both sides, and Reed's sort of taking the Suns here. I still have the Suns going to the finals, and we'll get to our finals picks and see whether or not we're staying with the ones we picked last week or not. We'll get to that in a couple minutes. But if we're actually talking about value, tweet just came in from the great Shams Charania over at Stadium and The Athletic. And Shams gave an indication that Luka Doncic could actually return either for Game 3 of the Jazz and Mavericks series on Thursday, or perhaps even Game 4, which is that Saturday.
Wow.
He mentioned that the calf strain that he suffered back on April 10th is improving. Workouts over the next few days could determine comeback timing. I also wonder too if Dallas steals Game 3 on the road in Utah, which is very much in play given what we've seen out of the way that the Jazz just continue to blow late fourth quarter leads. I don't think it would shock anybody if Dallas ends up stealing Game 3 without Doncic, and then maybe they don't necessarily have to bring him back for Game 4. They can take their time, make sure he's 100% healthy. But they're 20-1 to win the West. And yes, they would have to go through Phoenix and likely Golden State to get there. But I don't look at Utah as a matchup that's going to scare them. They already won Game 2 in comeback fashion, and Jalen Brunson stepped up. There's plenty of guys like Maxi Kleber stepped up as well. There's plenty of guys that can step up. They already are an elite level defensive team. Doncic comes back. They win that series against Utah. They've played the Suns in the 3 times they played. They lost all 3 games, but they played them close in pretty much every one. And then I actually think they took 2 of 3 from Golden State during the regular season. I'm not saying that it's the most likely of scenarios. What I am saying is that 20-1, I don't think is a fair reflection of how good of a team, especially in the second half, when Doncic came back healthy, the Dallas Mavericks were. I think if you're looking for a sprinkle, especially knowing that Doncic is coming back in this series, 20-1 feels like very, very good value for a team that I think has the ability. Like if we're talking about teams that have the ability to beat Phoenix as well as Golden State, the only team that I would consider in that mix is Dallas, and you can get them right now at the third lowest odds, or the third highest odds, with Denver, New Orleans behind them to go ahead and win the West. Like I just think it's still in play. Am I nuts?
I like it.
You might be a little nuts. I bet the Mavs because I thought they were going to get the 3 seed a few weeks ago. I got them like 14-1, so a little bit worse odds. But I still think they get by the Jazz because I think the Jazz just have Donovan Mitchell is so checked out. It's crazy. This defense they're toast. They don't care. So I think that they might sit Luka for game 3, even concede the game, and then play him in game 4 and come back from down 2-1. So I like Dallas with this series. I just don't know if Luka will be 100% because you're going to need a Herculean effort to get past the Suns. So I'm not rushing to bet it, but yes, I agree with you. If there is one long shot, I guess Dallas could do it because of 3-point variance, and they do have an unbelievable player in Luka.
And maybe the play on this too is you just wait it out. Because they still have to get through Phoenix, and they're likely going to have to get through Golden State after that. And maybe you're not getting them at 20-1, but let's say they beat Utah, you're probably still getting them at 14-1.
Yeah,
win the
That's
West.
Where I got it. I mean, I would wait to see if Luka's healthy, if he looks healthy. Cap trains are tricky, man. I don't think you're rushing back from that.
No,
I wonder if you wait till after game 3, Ben, and if they win game 3 without him, then it's okay, they'd
still be 15-1, 14-1.
Yeah, and that gives you a little bit more of clarity. Okay, now they just got to take 2 of 4 with Luka back, right. Probably.
Yeah.
Do y'all actually believe that they are going to win game 3?
They can. Why
not? They could. They definitely could.
Where is your confidence in the Jazz?
Why not?
It's not. Jalen Brunson scored 41 points, and Maxi Kleber shot 72% from 3. I look at that and I just see that as an aberration. Nobody hates on the Jazz more than me, right? I really can't stand it. But 41 points from Brunson, and the way that the offense looked at the end of game 1, I can't get that out of my head. I can't get them looking that stagnant. Brunson and Dinwiddie trying to go one-on-one every single play, and whenever they kick it out to Kleber, he doesn't do anything, and they're trying to rely on Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith. They hit every timely shot that they needed to. They were also down 7 with 4 minutes to go, and they were very much in the hole. And then Utah did what they did. So I understand why you might like that, like Dallas's chance more. But they got 66 points from Brunson and Kleber. I can't rely on that. I can't bank on that.
Yeah, I guess
you go, Pete.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's more just the motivation. I don't know if this Jazz team's heart is in it at all. I really don't. Mitchell just looks so bad. If Dallas just gives another big effort, I just think this Utah team is going to fold like a cheap suit. I really I can't trust them. Dallas is probably going to lose game 3, and then Luka comes back game 4. I would bet the Mavs to come back and win that series. I don't know, man. There's just really bad juju around this Jazz team. They really just have no interest in advancing, I don't think.
Yeah, you guys are both right. Donovan, to your point, the Jazz first 3 quarters they put just a clamp on Dallas offensively, and the Mavericks will go through stretches where I don't want to say they look inept offensively, but they don't really get a whole lot going. Their pace isn't necessarily something that helps them, but for whatever reason, fourth quarters, and this was something both with Doncic and without him, they've been a good team to live bet most of the season. And conversely, like Reed mentioned, Utah's blown 6 fourth quarter leads fairly late. 3 of them have been by 16 points or more in the last month. That's from Brian Damaris over on Twitter. So you're right. All of a sudden the fourth quarter comes along and Dallas could be down by upwards of double digits, they're not going to count themselves out. And then you have Utah on the other side going, God, are we going to do it again? Are we going to let this one slip away again?
If it's close late, I like Dallas. Like no matter what.
I think the thing too
Old
is
road,
like
I don't care.
Game two, Donovan, I agree with you, was kind of an anomaly, but game one was also an anomaly. They shot 38% from the field. Like they played bad, but like I don't know if they played that bad again.
Was 1 for 9, and Donovan Mitchell had like 2 points at halftime.
Yeah, but he ended up with what, 30? Like he had a huge second half, and Bogdanovich couldn't miss in the first half. Like I think like if the Mavs play like a middling game to games 1 and 2, I think they're in it, and that's all you can ask against this Jazz team because like everybody just said they blow leads. So if you're just in it, you have a shot.
That's fair. That's fair. I can't get that image out of my head of the Mavericks looking that bad. It's like if I'm playing defense on Brunson, where I just put my hands up, I'm waiting for him to pump fake, and I'm waiting for him to do the Nova pump fake. Pivot,
that's what every other team would do except the Jazz.
I'm standing there with my hands up, and I'm waiting for you. I'm just gonna do it. And it's like after I don't jump, what are you doing?
David, do you expect Utah to like be sitting there on this off day and be like, all right, let's like break down the film and like really like let's lock down our defense? Like, no, I'm being serious because like you just see these teams come out with such poor efforts. Like it happens when these teams are really checked out. Like Donovan Mitchell, like if you want to play body language doctor, no one loves to play that like me. Like he looks so checked out on this. His lobs to Rudy Gobert are terrible. The interior defense, it's Rudy Gobert just sliding down, trying to bail out whoever's playing on the perimeter. I just don't have a lot of faith in this Utah team. Like they're laying 7.5 to Dallas, even if Luka's out. Like I'm not betting that. I have no interest.
I will say one thing.
Like, where's the backbone of this team? Who's like rallying the troops? Like, hey, like let's go. We got this.
Royce O'Neal, baby.
The Rolls Royce.
Listen, maybe it is Royce, and maybe my next point is like a little bit of me overvaluing, but there's something special about cities like Boston and Utah that whenever you go there, the home court advantage is just a little bit different. It's just something special, something in the air, and it's like whenever you pull up to Salt Lake City, there's just a different atmosphere, and at least for one game, maybe that psychs them up. Maybe that gets Dallas out of their way. If Utah's gonna have a 6-man out there, then I don't know what Dallas is gonna do. There's just something different about Utah.
It'll help them get 5 guys on the floor, replace Mike Conley after that performance in game 2.
Maybe, but like listen, if Kyrie was in Utah, he would have been scratching his head all game long. He would have been doing it the whole game. There's just something different about Utah, man. So I'm probably banking on that a little too much, but I just don't see it. At least not in game 3.
So do you think Utah advances? Assuming Luka comes back, it seems like
if Luka comes back, no. If he doesn't, yes.
It seems like by game 4 he's gonna be back, right?
Then that would take him. But I'm saying if game 3, especially if Luka's not there, I don't see a way that Dallas goes up 2-1 and then gets Luka back.
Oh my God, they'd absolutely destroy him the next 2 games if they won without Luka again. Yeah. They would every alt spread. The Jazz might not. Donovan Mitchell might not walk out on the court if they lose game 3 without Luka. He might actually protest.
Somebody's protesting. Somebody's riding out there.
I think we can all agree with that. There'll be some aspect of a breakdown there. All right, so we've gone through the Western Conference. We've gone through the East. Let's see how we are feeling relative to last week. All 4 of us were on this very show right around this time. Let's do a little player stay. We'll go around the horn. We will reveal last week's picks to win the NBA Finals. And now based on the new information that we have gotten over, for some series, 1 game, perhaps even 2, whether any of us feel the urge to maybe change those picks. Now we're locked in. Like after today, there's no going back until, we decide to bet or whatever it is. But for the purposes of this very show, will you stick with your original play and stay there? Or are you going to make it a whole new place? All right, Peter, I start with you. Are you playing or staying your original NBA Finals pick?
I'm staying because last week was my end all be all. I was locking it in before the playoffs. I'm staying with the Suns in 7 over the Bucks. I am very scared about the Warriors. I will not make any question about that. I'm very scared about the Warriors, but no, I'm sticking with Phoenix. I just think at the end of the day, just how well they've played all year, you just can't discount their top 5 offensive rating, top 5 defensive rating. Like the Warriors, Steph has come back and been a lot better than I thought he was going to be. Like out of the gate with the injury, that was kind of what held me off of the Warriors. But not going to stay away from this. I really think this is what we end up seeing. I think a rematch would be great. So in an ideal world, you get a Warriors Suns conference finals, so we get that series, and then I think Bucks Suns would just be an electric finals for sure.
All right, Suns in 7 over Milwaukee. Scott Foster officiates Game 7 for all the drama to make it just a tad bit more interesting. All right, so you're staying with your original pick, Phoenix Suns in 7 games over the Milwaukee Bucks. Donovan, what about you? Are you playing a new NBA Finals bet, or are you going to stay with the one that you had from last week?
I'm staying as well. I'm going Bucks over Warriors. This is either 6 or 7 games. I'm not sure yet, but I think that at the end of the day, Giannis is going to be too much for Golden State. I think the threat that he poses, being able to move the way that he does up and down the court defensively, I think that they would just be too much. However, I might have one more checkout throughout this process because Golden State's looking crazy. I might do it, but all I know is that those 2 teams will be in the finals, and as of right now, I'm staying.
Okay, so we got 2 stays from Peter and Donovan. Peter's going with the Suns. Donovan's got the Bucks. Reed, I have a general inclination of where you're going, so go ahead and lay it down.
What would I be if I got off the Nets bandwagon? Of course, the Nets are still going to beat the Suns in 6. One brutal, heartbreaking gut punch of a loss to start the playoffs does not change my mind, does not change my psyche. I'm still locked in, eyes on the prize. Nets in 6 over the Suns.
All right, so we got to play for the Suns, we got to play for the Bucks, and of course, a play on the Nets. I'll go ahead and break that 3-way tie. I am staying as well. How about it? All 4 of us decide to stay.
Men of integrity.
Yes,
principle.
That is what we are. That is what we will be until the next opportunity comes where value is on the board. But I still like Phoenix. It's just hard to bet them beyond anything to win the NBA Finals at this point. We mentioned it. The Western Conference value is just simply not there. But they're the team to beat. They're so good on both sides of the ball. They feel like they have I feel like the questions that we had about Phoenix last year have all been specifically addressed. Paul is starting to get back to the postseason healthy. Booker has taken another step in the right direction. DeAndre Ayton, I think, has taken another step defensively this year. Like there's just Mikal Bridges is certainly another step with his 3-point shooting, as well as being, a prime candidate for defensive player of the year. Like he can go ahead and guard every position. And they also addressed, the backup center option as well with McGee. So there's depth on this team. They can run good rotations. You don't have to worry about them being exploited in really any type of matchup because they have answers to them that they didn't have before. And I think they took on a new persona this year of not being, they expected to be in this point compared to last year where I think they were kind of riding the momentum wave all throughout. And that changes the perspective of the team. Phoenix figured it out. And I do think as much as Milwaukee has the talent to be able to stay in this series and hang with them, I just think Phoenix has too many answers that they didn't have before. And I think they learned from their mistakes of last year. So give me the Suns in 6 games over the Milwaukee Bucks to go ahead and close things out for a little play or stay. By the way, Beers and Bowties, always appreciate Beers and Bowties checking in with us. As we get your Nets in check, I've got a futures on them.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, you'll be at Barclays on games 3 and 4. Go ahead and get down to center court. Hey, listen, if there's anything that we know about Kevin Durant is that he appreciates the open-mindedness and if there's constructive criticism, like that's what Kevin Durant is all about. Like go ahead and tweet him. He likes to respond. He likes to know what the fans are thinking. And maybe this is a good opportunity for him to be like, you know what, I'm really going to. No, that's not going to happen. But I do think the Nets are going to make a little bit of noise. Maybe not all the way down to the finals, but certainly against Boston, I think a lot of us certainly have the Nets making a little bit of noise throughout the series as well. Appreciate all you guys hanging out with us on this week's edition of Best Bets. Don't forget, on the weekend, we'll be back with you for Bet and Breakfast at 11 a.m. Eastern time, both Saturday and Sunday. And then, of course, on Monday, you guys have been hanging out with us on the earlier side over at 4 p.m. Eastern. But remember, our new live show Monday through Friday is going to air 5 p.m. Eastern time. The daily bet slip is going to be two of us each and every day going over our favorite bets of the day, taking your questions, going over some of your favorite plays as well. And of course, the community bet that all of us will be putting in together each and every night. So for my guys, Reed, Peter, and Donovan, big shout out to Joanne Stoner for producing our show today. I'm Ben. We'll talk to you guys next week on a brand new episode of Best Bets. Until then, so long. May all of your bets hit.